Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, the Democratic presidential ticket is now set, with Kamala Harris selecting Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her VP nominee. And back home, what's all this mean to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and any future presidential aspirations he may have? Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. I want to welcome my weekly co-host, Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Dr. Welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
Okay, another week jam-packed with news, starting with the top story, of course, the selection by Kamala Harris of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her VP nominee. Your thoughts on that, and then we'll get into the psychology of it.
My thought, first and foremost, is that you are the winner, Frank.
Oh, I am the winner.
You have said for 2 weeks that it's going to be Walz, and you are right. I am the runner-up. I had Shapiro, but let it be said, you were right.
All right.
And I feel that you were correct because of what we talk about here all the time, a winning personality. What she chose is somebody who is dynamic, and dynamic that relates to her. And he's very comfortable being himself, being who he is, and he projects joy and positive vibrations.
All right, now you've used this word dynamic, Dr. Rossi, several times. I don't see it. I think he's an honest man. I think he's a good man. He's certainly engaging. But dynamic, I think dynamic is Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Great speaker, very polished.
Right.
He seems, and to the benefit of Kamala Harris, he seems Midwestern, which is good. That's what but dynamic, I don't see that.
I see dynamic when I see him and the relationship he has with the audience. I see him gaining traction all the time, people wanting to hear more from him. He seems to bring out the best in not only who he is and what he stands for. I mean, that could be debated on the other side by the Republicans, but he seems to bring out a lot of energy from the people he's speaking to. And that's a rare talent, Frank. He does it.
How do you size him up against Vance?
Well, I think that he's going to highlight what he stands for, and he's going to speak in sound bites. He's going to say things like, I'm for choice when it comes to women. On the border, I want the Senate bill passed. He's not going to go into a lot of words. He's going to say, Ukraine, I'm for funding Ukraine. We need to be strong. We got to fight against Russia. So he's going to have a lot of, short statements, right to the point. That's how he speaks. And Vance is going to have to come back and say things like, well, you're too liberal and you stand for all these things. Well, he's going to say in response, this is what I stand for. I just said what I stand for. So,
all right, let's discuss the has-beens with regard to the VP sweepstakes. Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, Senator Kelly from Arizona, Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, Mayor Pete. What happens to these gentlemen now at this point?
Well, you're talking about the fact that they're young. I mean, Shapiro's only 51, so if he plays his cards right and he has a good 3 or 4 years, who knows what's going to happen down the road? Maybe he'll be a contender later. You don't know what's going to happen in politics, how people respond. I think they all have a bright future, but if you're talking about the presidency, now it's pushed back, maybe too far back.
Well, their job now, Shapiro's is to deliver Pennsylvania.
Right.
Kelly's job is to deliver Arizona.
Right.
That will only make them more attractive going forward in their political aspirations. All right.
And Frank, don't forget, all of these people could have a position in State Department or wherever.
But would you do that?
Maybe. Yeah.
It's yet to be seen.
Yeah.
All right, let's discuss very briefly the strategy now Donald Trump must employ, because now the ticket is out there. Kamala Harris, Governor Walz. What does he do to combat this?
Well, first off, let's talk about what he really should not do going forward. He can't continue by calling her a bum and stupid, and this one's a liberal, and that's not working. It doesn't look good. It's not having any impact, okay? So he needs to step up and do something very different. You talk about dynamic. He's got to do something different.
It appears like it's not having any impact. It certainly worked in 2016. It certainly worked to a certain degree in 2020.
It's a different world now. People with this divided nation want an action plan. They want energy. They want a positive vibration. The Democrats are providing that. Is that enough to win? I think it could be. But Donald Trump now is really in a trap. He has to step up and say something dynamic like, we're going to change the tax structure, or we're going to end the war by doing this in Ukraine. He has to do something different and out of the box right now, because the way he's going and the way that the Republican Party is teetering, with this ticket, it's a real question mark.
So maybe I think what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is this shtick is sort of worn off.
The Riz is right now, the charisma, if you will.
The Riz.
The Riz is with the Democratic ticket, and it's not with the GOP. So they've got to figure out how to move that back.
It will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
All right, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi that we call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, I'd like to go off a little bit on the fact that, from my point of view, for many years, people are saying that the VP pick is not that important. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I'm thinking that today, in the electronic age, the way it is now, different than 4 years ago, even 8 years ago, it matters. The VP pick matters more now than ever, because everything's in your face. What people stand for, who they are, it's much more important. And what we need to do now is to take a look at the two candidates and what are they going to provide. And I think that this is going to be a real serious measure of who wins the race. I know that that may not always be the case, but now here it is. We have a real contrast, and I think it's going to make a difference.
And we don't have a heck of a lot of time either.
No.
We're under 100 days until Election Day. All right, thank you, Doctor. Coming up, with all the presidential election machinations this week, what becomes of the man who started this year as the quote-unquote savior of the Republican Party, Ron DeSantis? A look at what's next for the governor of Florida when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. At the beginning of 2024, it seemed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was perfectly positioned to grab the presidential nomination of the Republican Party, or at the very least, the VP slot. Well, after nearly a $300 million campaign, the good governor from the great state of Florida remains on the outside looking in. All that money, no delegates for all intents and purposes. Where's Ron DeSantis go from here?
Well, actually, you may disagree with me on this, but I think he has a future if, in fact, Donald Trump loses the election. If he loses this election, somebody has to take over the MAGA base, okay? So he has a giant opportunity. However, there's a big however. This is like a really big one. I am not sure that the governor understands something. He needs a personality. We talk about it. We just did, again, about a winning personality. He's not seeing it. He doesn't see what everybody else sees. That he needs to step up, change his personality, speak in sound bites, get to the point, and be much more moderate. His extremism is not helping him.
See, I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
By the time 2028 comes around, and his term ends, if I'm not mistaken, the first week of January 2027. By the time the election comes up in 2028, there'll be Youngkin in the race. There'll be Georgia Governor Brian Kemp in the race. There will probably be Vance in the race. There'll be a whole slew of characters.
Right.
Not just him and Trump and maybe Nikki Haley. There'll be a whole slew of characters. I think, with all due respect to the good governor, I wish him well, I think he's this generation's Bobby Jindal. Now, if you remember Bobby Jindal, he was the governor of Louisiana. He ran for president in 2016. He did a rebuttal to the presidential State of the Union address, went down the drain, guy's out of politics, lives in California now. I'm not saying that the governor's moving to California.
And nobody knows who he is.
And no one knows. I say Bobby Jindal, you didn't know who he was at first.
I forgot him.
I think it's done for him. If he spent $300 million in his last campaign and maybe got a bunch of delegates, we would say, well, he goes in sort of as the favorite. I don't think he goes in as anything.
Well, you're making a good point, because as we know, changing your personality and modifying, and he has like a couple of years now left as governor. Can he really do that and make the change necessary and look good enough with the complexities that you've just enumerated? That's going to be a heavy lift.
He hasn't,
it's a heavy lift.
He hasn't done it since he dropped out of the race.
No,
and if he hasn't done it since he dropped out of the race, I doubt very much he's able to do it. Or maybe he'll have
It's a good point.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
He's had a lot of opportunities. He may have another slight opportunity going forward, but I don't see him making the effort to change.
We'll have to see. One of us is going to be right. All right, some Democrats, even with the polls showing Donald Trump way ahead, by a pretty good margin in Florida, still believe Florida is in play now with Kamala Harris and Governor Walz. Your thoughts on that?
The big difference here, I think, could be, as we were just saying, the VP. I think if Walz really does a good job of presenting himself and the ticket in a very positive, go-forward manner, that there are a lot of folks in Florida that may lean more towards the Democratic Party. Is it enough to win? Well, it could be in a close race. And this year we have abortion on the agenda, and we have marijuana.
Recreational marijuana.
So, and by the way, the VP is a military guy, 24 years in service. So, you know, we could see a change in the poll numbers here. It could get tight. And the way this is going, if the Harris ticket has some type of wave or momentum, sometimes, Frank, the momentum in politics can continue. I remember as a ball player once, I was on a really good streak of hitting the ball, and somebody said to me, "Well, you can only last for so long." Well, guess what? I had a season to remember, and I see some pros; they have a season to remember. They're hot all year, so this Harris ticket could be hot, and the Republican Party's got to do something now. They got to do something soon.
The question is, how many resources do the Democrats put into Florida?
Right.
Initially, and then look at the polls and say, hey, maybe it is doable. That's the question. How much money do they put in there?
That's right.
Do they send Walz down here? Do they send Kamala Harris down here?
That's a big question. It depends on their bank, of course, and how it's looking, by the way, in Pennsylvania and the swing states. Because the way this is going, they're also looking at even North Carolina and Arizona and Georgia, as well as Florida. Maybe Ohio could even be into play. So you're right. How much time and effort do they spend in one particular state? Yeah,
and money.
We'll have to see. Yeah.
Okay, so does Governor Walz on the ticket, you mentioned a moment ago, help at all with these amendments we talked about, the abortion amendment, which is Amendment 4, and legalizing recreational marijuana in the state of Florida, which is Amendment 3?
Yes, and the reason is that in Minnesota, it's popular. What he did in Minnesota, which is the Midwest, he made this very popular. The people there like him, like his policies. It makes good sense. It doesn't seem like it's too far left or too far right. It just seems like it's a good fit. So he's going to say that. He's going to go around and he's going to say, I am for choice. Stay out of my business. If it's a woman, she's got to say, stay out of my business. Let it be between me and my doctor. That's what he's going to say. That's hard to argue against.
Well, Minnesota was the first state to codify abortion rights for women right after the Supreme Court decision, which outlawed it. The question is, do they only have 3 months till Election Day at this point. Do they send him down here with the hopes of maybe changing some minds?
They are going to have a very robust, let's say, tour around the country. They're not going to leave any spots open.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I think we have a limited amount of time. What you do with Walz is you put him through the Rust Belt, maybe some states like North Carolina and so on. I don't know if you waste your time in Florida. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
And I'm not saying you should waste your time in Florida, but it's a great state. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it's all about the weather as we find out who enjoyed the sunshine this week and who got caught without an umbrella in a segment we call Sunshine or Showers when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. The weather in the Sunshine State can be changeable, to use a word. Sunshine quickly, turning to showers, and that goes for our friends in politics and elsewhere. So, with that being said, it's time now to find out who basked in the sunshine this week and who got caught in the rain in our always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers. We start with the sunny days. We like to. Who was in the sunshine for you?
Well, Frank, I think this is an interesting one. The sunshine on Biden and the State Department this week for what they did on the prisoner swap, okay? I thought this was really quite spectacular because what they did is they made it more complicated. They made it more expansive. So what they said is they created space for a negotiation. Very interesting psychology to try to appease the Russians and to try to make it happen. Certainly sunshine.
All right, lots of sunshine for them.
Who do you have this week?
Oh, who do I have in the
Yeah,
sunshine?
who do you have?
We have broken the rules with regard to sunshine or showers over the years. I had a flamingo as, remember one time
Yeah,
I brought the
yeah,
flamingo
yeah.
in, and it was a blow-up flamingo. He was in the sunshine. You've had sports figures
Yes,
in, so
yeah.
technically we're not a sports show. So I'm going to bend the rules a little bit.
Okay, all right.
I am putting the co-host of the very popular show Power and Politics in the sunshine this week. There's a handsome guy right there. Take a look at that. I'm putting him in the sunshine, and I'll tell you why.
Why is that?
We've had detailed discussions over the last several weeks in our editorial meetings with the executive producer, with Jeremy and his team in the control room,
Right.
with Lauren, our floor director, with the image and makeup consultant. We've talked about who is going to be Kamala Harris's VP pick. And we went on extensively, as you
Yes,
recall. In
we
fact,
did.
on this table last week at about this time, I put a modest bet of $10, and I said, Doctor, I bet you it will be Tim Walz, and you said, no, 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 it's going to be Kelly, it's going to be Shapiro, and I got it right. And at one point, there were 15 potential VP picks.
Right.
I got it right, so I'm putting myself, I hope you don't mind, in the sunshine this week. So that's my sunshine.
I think you deserve it because you were correct. And it's interesting that you were correct because of what we talk about here all the time and the winning personality and the traits and characteristics. So good for you.
All right, I am, there you
Okay,
go,
good,
to me.
Good for you.
Every sunny day, there's showers. There's showers.
Well, you know, Frank, we did a segment last week about real estate and condos here in Florida. And we said that the legislature is now going to be taking up new laws, new regulations to try to help the industry because nobody knows how much is supposed to be in reserves. The HOAs are too high. There's a lot of issues. And after thinking about it for a while, I'm wondering why didn't the legislature and the governor do something sooner? This is almost 2 years since the Hurricane Ian. Where they been? I mean, everybody else knows that there's a problem in real estate and with the HOA, so they should have done something sooner, in my point of view.
They are in the showers.
They're in the showers.
Okay.
And that reminds me that you need a shower.
You know who's in the showers this week? Have you heard the RFK Bear story? You know, the RFK Jr. running for president. I don't know what it is with this gentleman. Apparently, he saw a bear in upstate New York alongside the road. He said, let me put it in my car. Maybe I can skin it, maybe eat some of the meat. He drove it all the way down to New York City. He had a party. He figured, I don't want the bear anymore. And he left it in Central Park, and then they found the bear. I don't know what's exactly going on in his head.
It's stranger than weird.
It is weird, wacky stuff,
Yes,
as
it
they
is.
say. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a commentary by yours truly titled, Let's Be Frank, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back. The news business has changed, and that is an understatement. Since the arrival of social media, what was the domain of trained journalists has become a free-for-all of those with a multitude of opinions. I'm not complaining. More voices, more opinions can stimulate intelligent conversation. More cell phone video can catch wrongdoing. We may never have found out what exactly happened to George Floyd if not for a person with a cell phone camera. The downside is what these nonstop opinions about everything and anything have done to the national discourse. Everyone now has their own TV channel, YouTube, TikTok. Everyone has a social media outlet, Facebook, Instagram. News sites have followed suit and now sadly reflect what's going on online. What I call our fascination with personal grievance. A video about a passenger on a plane who got the wrong meal goes viral. Some server who felt put off by a tip at a local restaurant complains. Stories we used to tell our family when we got home are now personal tragedies. Add a celebrity to the mix and it can go on for days. It's all very silly and serves no purpose. What troubles me, however, is that this model of personal grievance has taken over our politics. In a normal world, two candidates for the presidency would meet face-to-face and spend an hour or so going over all the important issues of the day, politely listening to each other and then calmly stating their positions. But that's not where we are. Trump calls Kamala Harris a bum. The VP says, tell that to my face. Trump says, anytime, any place. What are we, in the 7th grade? In other industrial democracies, there is a seriousness to elections. Debates are a time to see who will lead and how. In this country, Trump and Harris can't even agree on a debate date. Instead, the former president reverts to name-calling. To his credit, he understands that politics is theater, and he knows how to do that well. But again, politics is a serious endeavor. It is not entertainment. It may be boring to listen to politicians lay out their vision of the future, but It's important that we know. It may not have the excitement of a wrestling match, and it shouldn't. It is about us, how each candidate will help us. It's long past time we replace silliness with seriousness. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-hosts, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.